Hello, welcome to an episode that discusses the concept of behavior change communication. I'm Dr. Pragati Paul, a senior assistant professor at AJK Mass Communication Research Center, Jamia Millia Islamia, specializing in development communication, research, advocacy, and traditional media. Today, we shall be discussing the role that behavior change communication plays in the process of development and social change. In this episode, we will be discussing the concept of behavior change communication and its several aspects. The term itself is quite self-explanatory. The strategy essentially includes learning from fields like information education communication and nutrition education. These two fields have a fairly didactic and a top-down approach. These fields traditionally involve the stakeholders like schools, educators, and media, and essentially design a campaign for the public to spread awareness and information. However, through the course of their development, the field experts understand that they need to permeate to the community. If change is need to be achieved, and this will involve the producers, manufacturers, workers, policymakers, and the community at large. Therefore, a new approach was formulated known as the behavior change communication, which is known as BCC, which followed a bottom-up approach by understanding the needs of the community and focusing on community participation for bringing about change. In this episode, we will discuss specifically in the chapters, and let's just talk about the objectives of this episode. A. To understand the concept of behavior change communication. B. To describe the importance and principles of behavior change communication. C. To analyze the models of behavior change communication. D. To learn the design process of behavior change communication. And the last, to understand BCC through a campaign. To understand what is behavior change communication, we need to first take a look at its origin and the various terms linked to it. BCC is primarily a behavior-focused activity or a strategy that encourages communities and individuals to change risk behavior for their own development. It is an approach that motivates societies, communities, and population in general to adopt healthy, positive, and beneficial behavioral practices. BCC can be easily termed as a precursor of IEC or information education communication. IEC is an approach to social change that uses the information available for positive change to build awareness and to educate communities and societies about an issue through the use of several communication strategies. This helps in promoting positive behavior that is required for the development of an individual. BCC essentially makes use of IEC strategies and takes it a step further by encouraging and enabling action. It simply means it provides a supporting environment in order to enable individuals to initiate and sustain positive behaviors. To further understand this better, let's learn in detail about behavior change communication. Behavior change communication, as discussed by authors, is defined as a process that is interactive and engages with societies or communities so as to design approaches and specific messages to develop positive behaviors using a diversity of communication channels. It also focuses on bringing about behavioral change on a community and societal level, promote and sustain individual and maintain suitable behaviors. Behavior change communication can also be a tactical use of communication to derive positive health outcomes which are based upon models of behavior change and theories. Behavioral change communications creates a methodical process commencing with research that is formative in nature, and behavioral analysis. This is followed by process of communication planning, execution, monitoring and assessment. Behavioral change communication is a step-by-step process in which audiences are analyzed and segmented, products and messages are created according to this segmentation and then pre-tested, and several channels of communication like interpersonal channels as well as mass media are utilized to achieve the distinct objectives. One should be clear that behavioral change does not occur overnight, and therefore there are steps that can be followed to achieve the preferred change as follows. The unaware state of the pre-contemplation state, when you are unaware of your need or the problems you face. The contemplation stage, and a stage when you become aware and reflect upon the change required. Then the preparing the process for change, and then the second step is taking action for change. Maintaining or termination the process depending on results. Advocacy if the process works, and evaluate for improvement. Along with these steps, there are also factors that govern change in behavior change communication. These factors are physical stimuli. It is based on an individual current physical state in addition to fear of potential pain, distress or reminiscence of the past pain. Second, rational stimuli. It's based on awareness of reasoning when people base their actions on facts and choose the right thing to do. Third, emotional stimuli. It's based on the intensity of one's emotions, the level to which they feel fear, love or hope. Family and personal ties based on the influence from family and peers. Skills based on the person's capacity to adopt and continue a new behavior, and social structures based on the impact of social, economic, legal and technological factors on the daily life of a person. Finally, behavioral change communication is essentially an interactive process of communication with communities, encouraging them to design specific messages, develop strategies and methods using a range of communication pathways to spread awareness and positive behaviors, and to promote and maintain individual, community and societal behavioral change. Behavioral change communication is a straightforward approach towards changing behaviors of people and communities. Information education communication approaches have become a part of behavioral change communication, as individually they do not work anymore in terms of spreading awareness and informing people. Now we will also learn about the goals of behavioral change communication. The primary motive of behavioral change communication is to create an understanding or an area of interaction with shared knowledge between the communities and the service providers. There is always a gap between the senders and receivers related to the perception of what is needed by the community, the behaviors that need to be targeted, and the availability of resources as well as the use of them. For example, in today's time, when menstrual health has become an open and increasingly discussed topic, especially with the availability of several products directed towards menstrual health, still women in India either they are shy or they don't discuss about it. In rural areas still it is considered as a taboo, and a lot of women still use cloth instead of other menstrual hygiene products. The reason behind this could be unawareness, cost of the product or unavailability of the resource. Therefore, making it an important issue that needs to be handled effectively through behavior change communication. For making communication effective, behavioral change communication has stated the following goals. First, to define clearly the problems and understand the needs. Second, to analyze the resources available along with outside support that will help deal with the problem. Third, to agree upon the most effective action for the cause to achieve its goals. To achieve these goals, behavioral change communication follows a specific set of principles that guides the functioning of the process. Let's have a look at all these principles. Behavioral change communication is unique for each cause, and it should be integrated within the goals and objectives framework of a program. Behavioral change communication assessments with a formative approach in mind must be carried out while developing important messages. During the planning, a development of behavioral change communication programs, the target population must participate in order to ensure effectiveness. The design stage of behavioral change communication programs must involve key and direct stakeholders. Pre-testing is essential for effective behavioral change communication materials before implementation in the community. Planning and preparing for monitoring and evaluation of program is essential to the process. Behavioral change communication strategies must promote positive change and will be action-oriented. When we bring all these essential principles together, we design a strategy. This strategy takes into account the target audience, their needs, their reach, and the communication channels that needs to be utilized in order to reach them. This process is known as message development. Now let's look at the topic, which is message development, in greater detail. What are the strategies we use when we design messages specifically in behavioral change communication? While designing a strategy for behavioral change, one needs to be particular about the messages which they are designing and for the target audience they are designing for. People learn through different means and varied ways. Some participate in reading to learn, some learn by doing, and some learn by talking or asking questions. Some learning happens outside the classroom through real-life experiences and by being in scenarios. Therefore, when designing a message for behavioral change communication, it is important and essential that positive messages are developed. Approaches become successful if they promote positivity through their messages. Messages should clearly outline what the audience can do and should do to ensure positive change. Behavioral change communication messages must be research-centered. It should be crafted carefully according to the audience, according to what people need to know and follow. It should be information-dense yet precise and simple for the audience to grasp. Client-centered. That means one needs to know the population group, their age, gender, education and geography, their preferences for learning, availability of media resources to this population group, their personal issues related to the subject and their trusted modes of communication and information. Benefit learning. This simply means it should be precise, simple and attractive and clear. The message should benefit learning through the use of words or images, and it should be able to stimulate audience into a discussion. Service interrelated. Messages should be explanatory as well, especially if it is promoting a product or a service that will help in the process of change. The message should highlight the product or service and show its benefits to the audience. Follow behavioral change communication principles. The message should be developed professionally, keeping in mind the principles of behavior change. It should be diplomatic and avoid conflict within the community. Messages should be formulated keeping in mind the community norms and values. Developing behavioral change communication messages includes analysis. Understand and analyze the idea of the issues and barriers to change. Design project goals based on the issues and the change needed. Involve a potential group of spectators or stakeholders of the community. With their help, understand the issue. Also, survey different projects, approaches, assets, positives and shortcomings and investigate. Second most important is strategic design. Recognize your target audience that best suits your issues and needs the environment for change. Conduct a formative and conducive behavioral change communication assessment. This will help to settle on area of work, recognize the target audience, segmentation and stakeholders interaction. Select the model for change to be utilized to design the strategy in behavioral change communication. Select communication channels and define behavior change objectives you plan to achieve. The third important aspect is development, pre-testing, revision and production. Design the strategy for behavioral change communication, inclusive of messages, channels and monitoring techniques. Create message ideas, pre-test with a group of spectators, individuals and guards. Design material and products for the communication. Amend and produce messages or materials and pre-test new and existing materials. Fourth important aspect is execute, implement and monitor. Implement the behavioral change communication and carry out constant monitoring to see the positive and negative effects. Conduct critical analysis of the process. Make sure that messages are consistent with the objectives of the behavioral change communication. The fifth important aspect is making arrangements for continuity. Gather feedback on the running project. Analyze the feedback and revise the project according to the new developments and changing policies. Adapt to changing conditions and plan for evolution and independence of the project. The stage of continuity of change and maintenance of behavioral change starts when individuals decide and try out the new behavior. If the outcome of the trial comes out as a favorable, then the change as in behavioral is accepted and continued further. The nature of behavioral change communication keeps changing over time. This change is subject to the need of the society and the new transitions required. While behavioral change communication focuses on individuals, change and makes an individual as the focus that ultimately leads to societal change. There was also a recent need to focus on the societies or communities as a whole. Sometimes the entire community or population needs to be focused to bring about a positive change in a nation. This led to the evolution of SBCC, which is called Social and Behavioral Change Communication. Social and behavioral change communication is a concept which focuses on community as the center for change. It considers the community as the most important unit that can influence both individual as well as societal change. It is a more inclusive and broader approach to behavioral change as it transforms and distributes the power to change between social and political institutions and not just at the individual level. This entire system is involved in the format of change. Social behavioral change communication has evolved from the linear model of communication that includes the sender-receiver to the level of analysis of behaviors as well as the factors that determine change in attitudes, knowledge and practices of the public. The framework of social and behavioral change communication makes use of strategies such as social marketing, advocacy, health communication and community mobilization along with behavioral change communication to support the social context processes supporting several issues and systems needed for change using a process that is research based to promote and facilitate behavioral change. The various aspects that needs to be considered while designing a strategy for social and behavioral change communication are contexts like demography, geographical, characteristics, regional factors, cultural practices, value systems, healthcare systems and government schemes. The issue in the implementation of behavioral change communication lies in the lack of perceptiveness for people's behavior. For example, during the start of the pandemic of COVID-19, hand washing, wearing a face mask and social or physical distancing were never the norm for the general public. The behaviors were introduced due to the dire situation of the pandemic. This wasn't immediately welcomed as a desirable change for the masses. Individually, people did not want to follow these precautions. Therefore, they were introduced as rules, especially the mask, social distancing and the sanitization. The entire socio-political system was involved in the process to ensure that these rules finally become habits and lead to behavior change. Today, as we see that the effect of the pandemic has slowed down, still a lot of people in the society and community still follow the behavior that changed their life and made them safe. The key audience is important, but the health educators, workers, promoters, policymakers are the core as they possess the core competencies to change human behavior. To facilitate change amongst people, behavioral change communication strategies are based on the various behavioral change models. These are as follows: A. The health belief model, B. The theory of planned behavior, C. Diffusion of innovation theory, D. Social cognitive theory, E. The social norms theory. The health belief model was primarily developed as a means to analyze the failure of people to adopt disease prevention strategies and bring about change in their lifestyles. It suggests that an individual believes in their susceptibility to a disease or illness, along with their faith in their benefit from a planned intervention, establishes the likelihood of their acceptance of certain health behavior. The health belief model is perceived to be one of the most effective models for change and can be used to plan behavioral change communication strategies. These strategies are based on the idea of perceived susceptibility, perceived severity, perceived benefits, perceived barriers, cue to action, and the last, self-efficacy. Although a combination of models or theories might be used for a behavioral change communication intervention, some important influencing factors can still be missed by the planners. For example, the theory of planned behavior and health belief model are usually used in combination. However, they do not address the natural human behavior such as habits, impulsiveness, associative, learning, self-control, and emotions. Therefore, before going ahead with any behavioral change intervention, meticulous research of human behavior, nature of the problem, needs of the audience, availability of resources needs to be carried out. This issue has been researched again and again, and it was addressed that this problem, along with the selection of social influence mechanisms, coexist by affecting every individual's health-related behavior and also communities' risk communication in the face of the urgent health crisis. The behavior of people that makes them competent of voluntarily adapting more health precautionary measures signals the severity of the current health crisis to rest of the community. This judgment of severity assists in developing social norms for preventive public health measures. A great example of these models for behavioral change being put to work can be seen in the recent times. The health belief model, theory of planned behavior, and social cognitive theories were most commonly applied in influenza. In the past and COVID-19 in the recent times. In India, the central government created the urgency and the need for people to understand the criticality of the situation. It also resorted to clever tactics like involving in popular actors like Amitabh Bachchan and integrate BCC messages as caller tunes to promote suitable preventive behavior with regards to COVID-19 among the public. This was done in addition to usual television and radio campaigns. To control and prevent the infectious disease like COVID-19, it is important for the public to follow appropriate behaviors and maintain hygiene at a higher level than usual. It is also compulsory to maintain boundaries on social gatherings, traveling, and social contact to control the spread of the disease. Therefore, most of the interventions designed required active efforts from communities and individuals to build these modifications into their usual habits and actions. There are several legislations and guidelines that were levied on the nation as a whole. But the behavioral change communication framework also made sure that it reached individuals personally through several medias and educate them about the spread and control of COVID-19 so that effective preventive behaviors can be followed by the individuals. Now let's conclude. At the end of this episode, we can easily point out that behavioral change communication is and should be a component of all successful interventions, and it must be included in the original design so as to make it a process. It is a process through which effective communication can be established at several levels and participation in one's own development, which can be made easy. However, it should be noted that behavioral change is not an easy process that happens overnight. It needs strategies and principles that should be the essence of the program. It also needs resources like stakeholders, policymakers, educators, and community influencers who should take the battle in their hand when driving social change, as the effective inclusion of the communities depends on the effectiveness of these essential resources. To be effective in the long run, behavioral change strategies must keep evolving themselves in accordance with the need of the target audience. This requires continuous research and involvement of resources, both human and financial. Ultimately, for behavioral change communication to be effective, the message design and development should be at the core of any program. It should build with time and create linkages with the ongoing challenges. Now it's time for a quick recap. Behavioral change communication is primarily a behavior focused activity or a strategy that encourages communities and individuals to change risk behavior for their own development. It is a bottom up approach and believes in the active participation for change. Behavioral change communication is a successor to the popular IEC technique. It considers creating awareness as a step towards behavioral change. Behavioral change communication helps in wisdom, mindfulness, confidence, certainty, and attitude about well-being practices. Behavioral change communication programs encourages community to take responsibility towards the progress of the program. It should be incorporated with the aim and objectives of the program. Behavioral change communication approach must engage plans for monitoring and assessment. Message design is the core of behavioral change communication. Each message that is designed should be research-centered and audience-centered. The channels of communication are essential for the messages to effectively reach the audience, therefore, a thorough research is required. This is all we have for you today. We shall soon return with another interesting episode. Until then, thank you. Namaskar.